Welcome to the Money to the Masses podcast, putting you in control of your finances. It's a good thing podcasts are free, as this one isn't worth a penny. Here are your hosts, Damien Fay and Andy Leakes.
Now, Damien, before we get on with this week's podcast, you had something quickly to say about our sponsors.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor, Money Farm, and Money Farm are an online investment advisor and one of the biggest digital wealth management companies in Europe. So a big thank you to them for sponsoring the podcast. Now, Money Farm create portfolios to maximise long-term returns using ETFs to make incredibly cheap portfolios. And you even get the first £10,000 of your portfolio invested without any charge from Money Farm. And if you enter the code MTTM20K into the box when you sign up, you get the first £20,000 of your portfolio invested and run by moneyfarm.com without any charge.
Great stuff. On with this week's show. Hello and welcome to episode 110 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fay, and me, Andy Leakes. Damien, how you doing?
Oh, good, Andy. It's good to see your smiling face. You do look particularly happy today.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
The sun, maybe. It's quite bright today.
Yeah, I think it's the sun. We'll put it down to the sun. That can have the credit.
Yeah, it's been a sunny day, hasn't it? So, it's nothing to do with Black Friday, I'm taking it. I mean, this podcast has been recorded on the day that is known as Black Friday, which I loathe, but that's just because I think everybody goes a bit crazy. We'll touch upon that in this podcast anyway. What's your view on Black Friday, Andy? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah, I do.
The way you paused it. Andy's currently drinking a cup of tea as well. That's how relaxed he is when he does a podcast, and that's a good thing.
The reason I paused on the Black Friday thing is because my views have changed. So I was trying to work out how I'm going to pitch this.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
A couple of years ago, when Black Friday was new to the Brits, it's obviously been around for a few years in America, and it kind of ties in with Thanksgiving. It's a new thing to us a couple of years ago, and I found it quite exciting and liberating. Now, everyone's jumped on the bandwagon. I'll be honest, I'm bored with it, and it's kind of slightly annoying. Everything's Black Friday now. I mean, there's even restaurants that are saying Black Friday. You know, come along and eat today. It's Black Friday. I think, come on, people.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm kind of bored of it.
Yeah, the whole Black Friday thing that's come from America is, I mean, I've been asked loads about it this week, being a money commentator, and I mean, I try and be not too miserable and dismissive of it, but I do realise it's completely a marketing ploy. We touched upon it in the podcast 106, or a couple of podcasts ago, where we talked about the whole fact that Black Friday, about 40-50% of deals are actually not true savings, and a lot of these people, like Amazon, and actually some researchers found that most products on Black Friday are actually cheaper before and after the day. So it is a bit of a marketing ploy. People love it. You do get some good bargains. There's no two ways about it. There are some absolute belters that people get, but I don't think it's necessarily the norm. But anyway, I'm going to touch upon that at some point, not the Black Friday itself, because by the time you're listening to this podcast, it won't be Black Friday, and you could be listening to this in 2 years' time, but about the whole sales and the aftermath of sales. So I'll give a couple of bits of advice and tips on that. And the autumn statement, I'm going to, do you know what? People are probably thinking I'm going to do a whole podcast on the autumn statement. I'm not. I'm going to do the most insightful 10 seconds on the autumn statement ever. Well, that's not true. Maybe a bit longer than 10 seconds. And I'm going to do a bit on investing. And do you remember I did some fund manager confessions?
Yes.
People have asked for a few more. I think they quite like those. So I'm going to reveal one or two more of those. And I actually listened to a podcast of ours. Again, I do listen to past podcasts. I'm not some sort of weirdo.
Talk me through your mindset there. What are you doing? Are you thinking to yourself, do you know, I really need a bit more me? And do you just pick a number? Do you just go back and pick a number?
Andy, how do you know I'm not thinking I need a bit more you? But what happens is sometimes I'm flicking through stuff on my phone, and then I'll come up, not by accident, I'll go through and listen to bits of the podcast, because we cover so much. I occasionally have ideas and think, did I do that on the previous podcast? Because there'll be ideas that I drop at the last minute before we do the podcast, and actually the point is, I listened to a podcast that we did about a month ago where I promised to talk about some holiday stuff. And I heard that bit, and I even said, I'll do it next week, and I'll probably forget, so remind me. And of course, I did forget, so here we are, about 4 podcasts later. I'm delivering on a promise.
I like the fact that you even left a little footnote in the podcast to remind you, and you actually reminded yourself, which is, it's a slightly backward version of like reminders, Outlook reminders.
There's probably been
audio
nobody.
reminders.
There's been nobody probably in the history who's ever reminded themselves via recording a podcast to do things. I might have to do that with my household chores like washing or whatever.
Yeah, it's quite futuristic.
Cleaning my clothes. Yeah. Anyway, you didn't actually ask me what was going to be on this podcast, but I just veered off and told you. So that's what's going to be on here. So some interesting stuff. We'll start with the autumn statement quickly. And for a lot of people, the autumn statement can be pretty much summed up. There was the Chancellor standing up and pretty much saying, we're going to have to borrow so much money now. We are really in it. More than £100 billion more than we thought we would do. And the economy's not going to grow as well as we thought. So this is a bit of a Brexit fallout. And it's not to give any backing to people who wanted to remain. And it's not something to chuck around. I know people are. But the point is just that the economic plan has shifted. So in that respect, for all of us, it wasn't wonderful. But in terms of winners and losers, now, on the day, I'm like you, Andy, I like to innovate and do different things. And I'm really getting into social media in a big way now. And I'm on Instagram. Money to the Masses is on Instagram, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook and Twitter. The last 2 people know anyway. But we're really veering on doing a lot of stuff on social media now that's a bit innovative. And so what I did is I created basically a music video with a hip-hop theme that shows the winners and losers. And yes, I will say it's good, but the feedback I've got from it, if nothing else, listen to the track, because the track is brilliant. It only lasts about 2 minutes, so there's no point me going over it here, because if you're listening to this podcast, the chances are you like listening to stuff. So go onto YouTube or my Instagram profile, all up Money to the Masses.
Or Facebook.
And it's on Twitter, but it's harder to find, isn't it? It drops down the feed. But if you go on YouTube and find our channel, then you subscribe to all these things, because we're adding stuff all the time. There's a 2-minute video that has had a lot of good feedback that isn't boring. There is opinion and stuff in there, and shows you who the winners and losers are in the budget, not the budget, the autumn statement.
It is a lovely little bite-sized piece that you can just ingest and enjoy with the music in the background. I loved it personally. I shared it too. So good stuff.
Yeah, the thing is, people were writing about the music is also it is really good piece of like instrumental, and that's the thing. If you could get somebody to play a money video. Not that there's ever probably been money videos before, more than once, I think you've achieved something. So we're going to do lots of things like that. And also, before we move on Instagram, people can, if you follow me on Instagram, you can see what I get up to during the day. I sometimes update, there's a function on there called Stories, which take photos and show you what I do. And there was one on there the other day, and I was driving and talking about money, and I was filmed doing it. So it's all a bit different. If you are intrigued of what goes on behind the scenes at Money to the Masses in this podcast, then have a look at that.
Good. Okay. The other thing to take from the autumn statement, did I hear something that said that basically the main budget is now being moved from like spring to autumn? Is that one of the changes?
Yeah, basically.
What does that mean for
the world? The world is so fed up of autumn statements. I think even the Chancellor was. He took the chance to say in the autumn statement there is going to be no more autumn statements, which I loved. I think it's just almost. Making a speech which says I'm not going to do any more of these is it's quite a cop-out. But what they're going to do is they're going to change the budget. The budget at the moment happens in March, and then they end up doing this autumn statement that happens in the autumn. And they're going to flip that round effectively. They're going to have a spring update, and then the budget's going to be later in the year. So it's kind of the same what it is now, but round the other way. So we're not going to obsess about things in the towards the end of the tax year.
We're just going to absolutely crap ourselves before Christmas instead.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's just thinking he's got in a job. Do you know what? I can't be bothered to stand up here again in 6 months and overhaul all this stuff. So, and he probably realised he's going to get a bit of a caning for all the growth projections and things like that. So yeah, it's changed, but not much. You haven't got to worry about budgets at the end of the tax year.
Good. Okay, so that's autumn statement covered. What next?
Right, I want to just quickly talk about, while we were chatting around the sales idea, so Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or just anything, a sale in general. So just a couple of things at the aftermath when we all bought things that we wish we hadn't. And we've all done it. I mean, or tried to save money one way or another and end up with something that we wish we never had. And I don't know if you have, Andy. You strike me as the kind of guy who has, who probably has a whole room full of things.
Yeah, my house is absolutely chock-a-block full of things like that. I mean, I've got a £250 telescope in the garage there. I think that's been out of the garage once, and that was only because I needed a bit more space to put it up. It wasn't to look at stars. Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of examples.
Andy, I could just do that piece there, like on the fly, and ask lots of other people. If I asked them, they'd have to think long and hard about examples. Even though they had plenty of them, you could just turn around and just ponder that. Yeah, that over there. So that's why you're such a wonderful co-host, Andy. Apart from your skills of co-hosting and editing, but you're just full of examples that just make this podcast better. But the point is that after we've normally gone to the sales and we've bought things we don't want, we need to take things back. And I just want to mention to people that when they actually go to sales in future, they should always try and check the returns policies of anything they buy, because they differ from store to store and you can't always get your money back. But what will often happen is a lot of places will give you credit notes, or they'll give you vouchers that you have to spend in store, so you feel kind of trapped. So for those people, I just want to give them a little ray of light. If that happens to you as a result of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or any sale in the future, then there are sites like Zeek.me where you can buy and sell vouchers at a discount. So sell your vouchers, your unwanted vouchers, through there. That site was actually started by somebody who had that problem, who had a voucher they'd been given at Christmas that was going to go out of date if they didn't use it, and then thought, well, why have we got these vouchers? There's millions of pounds on vouchers that are in kitchen drawers. I mean, I'm the world's worst for that. You get given a voucher and you don't actually use it and they run out.
Damien, I've got a really good example of not using a voucher. Sainsbury's, last week they do a special thing where you can double up your points, your Nectar points. So £10 worth of Nectar points is worth £20 of vouchers, but you have to choose the area in which you want to spend it, whether it's sort of toys, Christmas, things like that. So I thought, right, Christmas is coming up. I'm going to buy all my wrapping paper, all of my Christmas cards, a few Christmassy bits, basically. So we took the journey, 15 miles down the road, went to Sainsbury's, thought, well, might as well go to town on Christmas because we've got £20 worth of vouchers here. Bought about 30 quid's worth of Christmas stuff, advent calendars, you name it. Walked out, paid, got home, forgot to use the voucher. So I ended up buying £30, over £30 worth of Christmas stuff that actually most of it I didn't need because I was only buying it because of the voucher. And now the voucher's out of date because I've checked the terms and conditions and the voucher had to be used by the 23rd of November. So I've gone 15 miles out of my way to spend more money on something that I didn't need, and I didn't even use the voucher. So there we go.
As if to prove my point about the perfect co-host, Andy, you just done it again. That's a wonderful story. I mean, save for the fact you lost money, but we've all done that with vouchers that you end up finding. The only ones I like are the book vouchers, so book tokens. You remember those everyone used to get when they were kids, and theatre tokens, because they don't tend to have expiry dates. So there's a tip: if you want to buy some vouchers for people, buy those. Yeah, so make sure you check what the returns policies are, but then if you can't return them and get your actual hard cash back, then you can do something with those vouchers and sell them on. The other tip is, if you are going to get involved in one of these sales, then buy online, because the consumer rules under buying online is you get 14 days to get your money back, and you don't get vouchers, you get your money back. So there are plenty of shops out there that if you were to buy the product in the shop and return it, you'd get vouchers. Whereas if you bought the same product through their online site, you could actually have a full refund. Okay. So if you are going to get involved, do that. The other thing is use the likes of, use your credit card when buying, or PayPal, because you will be able to get a refund if there's something not quite right with the sale stuff that you've bought, or there's something dodgy that's going on. And bearing in mind that you get consumer protection as well, don't you, if you buy with credit cards? under the section 75, where if you buy something that's got a value of between £100 and £30,000, you are protected. You can make a claim against your credit card company if there's something goes wrong. So you only have to spend £1 for that. So there's a quick tip. And if you want to know more about that, then go on the website. So yeah, that's the aftermath of sales.
Good stuff. Okay, what have we got next?
Right, the next piece is about funds and fund managers. Now, last week, the FCA, so they're the regulators of the financial world, came out and had basically a press release that they'd done a review, or they were looking in to the fund management industry, so fund managers, and leading on to platforms and advisors. So the funds you buy, active fund managers. So they were looking at that, and they said this whole sector needs a full-blown investigation review because it doesn't offer value for money. And there was lots of things that they stipulated about what they didn't like about the industry, about the opaqueness of the charges, and whether the performance that people got merited the high charges that some fund managers charge. And ultimately, they pretty much came to the conclusion that we've all known for years, that fund managers
are crooks.
Yeah, well, they rip us off. And there is that case of that guy who did get into trouble for, do you remember, I think he was a fund manager who spent years commuting into London and not paying his fare.
He was from Kent, I think.
Yeah, he was pretending. He was doing a long commute, but he was buying a ticket from a nearer station, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And he racked up, I think it was tens of thousands over the years that he saved, even though he was ridiculously wealthy.
I think he came clean, didn't he, and just said, okay, fair cop. I've actually been doing this, and sort of gave them all the information. He sort of spilled all the beans, and it turns out he was doing it for years and years, and it was like tens of thousands.
Yeah, he got caught, and then, the thing is, people, when they get caught, it's all well and good sort of holding your hands up, but he would have carried on doing it. And I think in the end, they didn't accept, because he was just trying to use his money. I'll pay it all back to make it go away. But I think he didn't. I think he ended up losing his job because it meant he wasn't fit and proper for a role in financial services, because he was being completely, it's fraud, wasn't it? So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I want to say a quick thing on that. That is obviously wonderful news that they're going to look into the industry. I don't think much will happen as a result, by the way, but the idea that they think there's not enough competition in the financial management industry, so managers are able to basically profiteer to a certain extent. They're not driving down the cost enough. That will change with more and more passive investment solutions coming around. These are like trackers and things, and it can only be a good thing for consumers. But my one, I suppose, not criticism of the FCA, but something to point out is that it's a bit like when you have the obesity problem, where we go and just try and price out foods to solve the problem, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So we just start saying, look, make all the unhealthy stuff expensive. And the problem is, people don't suddenly just change the way they behave overnight just because something is a bit more expensive and the good stuff is a bit cheaper, because it's actually ingrained through marketing, behaviour, and things that are passed on from sort of previous generations. You can't underestimate the power of fund houses. So I think there's a whole bit about financial education that we need to do. Not the stuff they talk about in schools, but in helping people to make wiser choices, just like the food side of things. But there is an investment. If you teach people and empower them to be able to make better choices, what will happen is they will be able to see, to make a judgment call of what is a good fund, what isn't a good fund, where they're not getting good value for money and where they are. And it doesn't matter what those fund managers do, because ultimately people will start to veer towards things that are good value and things that do reward the fees that they pay, and actually through performance. And then you get the good old economics of demand and supply all coming into effect, and price, and then actually people, the competition will increase, because fund managers who are screwing everyone will be lose all their customers. So that's kind of where 80/20 comes in, 80/20 investor, because that's a lot of that is really what that's about, is teaching people this stuff. So if you have got any interest in DIY investing, then check it out. The other thing I wanted to raise on that is that people were asking me, obviously these fund managers are slightly shady, not all of them, many of them aren't, but there are one or two, and people like those confessions that I did the other week, where I mentioned some of the dodgy things they do in terms of performance and trying to, for marketing reasons, and ask for one or two more. So I've got to just throw one or two more out there. It doesn't make me very popular in the industry, but hey ho. one of the things that fund managers do is, if they're going to launch funds, then they might launch a bunch of them at the same time. And then they will find that just by the law of averages, that perhaps half of them don't outperform the benchmark in the first year.
Are we using that lovely phrase, which was throw enough shit and some of it will stick?
Do you know what, Andy? That is the best analogy. If you throw enough of that stuff, it will stick, and that's what they do. So after year one, then the ones that where it doesn't stick, then they'll can those and they'll ditch them. And then after year two, less of that stuff will stick, and so the next maybe half of them again will underperform. So they end up keeping the one outperforms. And then by the end of year three, where they've got probably left with just one fund, they'll sit there and say to the world, we're geniuses, look at this. And that's the problem with fund management, is that sort of continuity bias that comes in. It's actually, funds will die and be closed and merged, and you end up only seeing one eventual winner.
Yeah.
And all the others are discarded. And so if you were to look at how a fund manager does and how the performance of that fund house is over time, it won't include those funds that they've just, well, you said the stuff they've chucked at the wall that didn't stick. That's not included in there because they're basically discarded. They're hidden. So fund managers do that, and you can have a look for it. So it's one of the reasons why you don't always jump into a fund early, because you might be going into the fund which they're, as you said, Andy, where the shit's been chucked at the wall and it won't stick anyway. So it's a trick they use. Watch out for it. It will, if anything, just look for it, because it's actually just quite fun to see that this stuff goes on. It isn't, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people out there that don't do it, but there are some that will do, especially some of the smaller ones.
Sounds similar to me, like those friends that you have that like a little flutter on the horses or the football. You only hear about the winners. But when you actually dig deeper, you actually hear that, they've had hundreds and hundreds of bets that didn't go anywhere, but you only hear about the winners.
Andy, you're on fire today. That was another brilliant example. That's exactly it. It's the same thing, but ultimately, investors are pretty much gamblers, but the difference is that they actually gamble with other people's money. If you go into a stockbroker's trading floor, most of those people will have very large betting accounts as well, because it's in their DNA. It's the kind of people they are. And if you gave somebody loads of money that wasn't their own, it's even more reason to take on risk. And that's one of the things that's very difficult to find out. If you could find out if a manager invests in his own fund, there are obviously certain things they can and can't do, but there are people who don't invest in their own fund, and you sometimes think, well, if you don't back your own horse, then why should anybody else? But there you go. That's one of the things to look out for. Another confessions of the fund management industry. It doesn't mean they're all sharks. It doesn't mean that trackers are the best things ever, because obviously there are downsides to those as well. And the FCA may finally do something about it. Good. I think that's wrapped up, and we need to crack on, Andy, because I'm looking at the time and we're getting on. So we need to do the holiday tips. The thing I forgot about before we run out of time again.
Okay, Damien. Good. Shoot. Holiday tips. What we got?
Holiday tips. Now, everybody wants to go on holiday, don't they? It's their time of year. And it was just really some tips from people who are seasoned travellers, really. And how they book flights, how they get good deals. And I'm going to just rattle through them. But there were people who regularly travel around, and the way they get good flights is by using price trackers. Now, I'm not particularly, I don't go away that much, so I don't do this, but there are sites out there, for example, like Kayak and Google Flights, that actually allow you to do price trackers on particular flights or routes. So you can see when a deal is dropping, a price is dropping or whatever, and you can then be emailed and you can purchase it. So you can get a good deal on that. So have a look at those if you're looking to go away. Google Flights I like, actually, because you can ask it to almost suggest things rather than that being knowing that you've got to go from place A to place B. It can, based on seasonal variations and things like that, it can actually suggest some cheap places to go, which I quite like.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The other one is when you go onto planes, you might want to book certain seats, and it always seems to be, especially now with the budget airlines now allow you to book seats. There's something called Seat Guru, which will allow you to see the plan of the flight you're going to go on, and as and when desirable seats open up, because sometimes they do, people don't use them or whatever, they might release blocks of seats. You can get emailed, so you can go on there and book your seat for the flight you've already paid for, which is quite novel. I didn't know you could even do that. So there's another site, expertflyer.com, that does similar things. So yeah, cheap flights, get the right seat. The The other thing is you can get lounge passes. You don't have to be a wealthy traveller to be able to go in the lounges at airports, and there are things called Lounge Buddy, Priority Pass, Number One Traveller. They allow you to go into VIP lounges for a small price, and I actually did this because if you remember, a couple of weeks ago I went to a conference in Portugal to do with the future of the internet, and the person I was with had one of those, and being a seasoned traveller, and I was able to go into the lounge for free. So you go into a lounge, you imagine going to the airport, and it actually it's quite good value for money, because you go in the room and there's a TV, loads of seats, loads of space, and there's a bar in the middle, if you've ever been into one, with food and whatever, sandwiches on there, which you just have as much as you want, as much coffee as you want, and obviously as much alcohol as you want. So you go in there, and for the price that you're going to pay, if you went into the main terminal and bought a sandwich and a bottle of beer or whatever it is you wanted to do, you're going to pay way more than sort of 10, 15 quid, whichever the costs are. Because even if you have to pay a supplement for the extra person to go in, it's never very much. So I was quite impressed by that, actually. So have a look at those. And the last but no means least, have a look at joint travel insurance. There's a tip on travel insurance. We always tend to buy family or joint ones, which actually can work out well if you've got children, because they end up getting included free in some of these policies. So it can actually be cheaper if you buy joint travel insurance. The only thing is to bear in mind that some of the benefits are shared. So if you've travelled, then if you have, you lose cash, that can be shared.
Right.
So rather than having a £500 limit per person or £1,000 or whatever it is, that will be shared across the whole party that is covered under the policy. And also do check the price of the if you had them separately, especially if you have people who've got pre-existing medical conditions or they're older, because that can push the price of the policy up for everybody. So check what it is if you were separate, because then you would end up maybe getting it cheaper, but also duplicating or getting more cover for your money as well than if you were all clubbed together. So they were a few quick fire tips for getting away.
Good. It's getting me quite excited. I want to book a holiday for next year. I haven't quite thought where I want to go or what I want to do, but I think Black Friday, instead of buying the Christmas stuff, I might actually start getting onto Google and looking at those flights. I might look at Google Flights. That looked interesting.
Yeah, but like you said, Andy, everyone does Black Friday now, so you'll probably find the airlines are doing Black Friday. I've not even looked, but they probably are.
Yeah. Probably
anyway, that is it for this week, Andy. Next week, do you know what? I probably shouldn't promise.
Be careful what you promise.
I'll be careful what you promise, because I need to deliver. One of the things I was going to potentially talk about this week, which might roll over to next week, is to do with alpha and timeframes of investing. An interesting question that I was asked by an 80/20 investor that I would make a nice piece on the podcast, sort of simplified down, about the idea of when you try and judge two things against each other. So when you judge one portfolio against another, and it's quite relevant because you'll have lots of people out there, like we're saying about the FCA idea about whether you're getting value for money. It's trying to work out how you know you're getting value for money from a portfolio that's run for you or you run for yourself. So I will do that next week, Andy. You just need to make sure I do.
Good. Okay, so do get in touch in the usual way. Damien at moneytothemasses.com, or you can contact the podcast directly, podcast@moneytothemasses.com, or Damien's Twitter. Check out Twitter anyway. Check out Damien's Instagram account. We mentioned it earlier. And if you can leave a review, that would be amazing. You just need to go onto iTunes and just say that we're brilliant. How about that?
Excellent. That's it for this week, Andy. And I will see you next time.
Looking forward to it. Bye.
Don't forget to claim your free copy of Damien's best-selling book, The 30-Day Money Plan. Sort your finances in just 5 minutes a day, worth $4.99. Just go to moneytothemasses.com/podcast to find out how.